Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story, a mystery you'll want to unravel. Thanksgiving had come, and I slipped out of work early, my heart buzzing with eagerness and optimism. For weeks, I'd been poring over every detail of this feast, picturing a snug evening wrapped in the company of my nearest and dearest. My mind danced with visions of a flawlessly cooked turkey, creamy golden potato casserole simmering, and a rich pumpkin pie ready to delight. After years of grinding through long shifts and unrelenting job stress, all I wanted was a tranquil night at home with my wife, Emily, and my mom, Barbara. On the drive home, memories of earlier Thanksgivings flickered softly in my head like a cherished old movie. I thought back to the joy we found in simple dishes and the deep sense of connection that only family can offer. But things weren't the same anymore. With my dad gone and my mom remarried, our family's rhythm had shifted in ways I hadn't seen coming. Emily, who used to be my anchor, was now caught up in the shiny trap of social media, spending hours scrolling through likes and viral posts, and she'd grown so tight with my mom that I often felt like a stranger in my own house. When I got home, I stepped inside with a cautious thrill. I went from room to room, carefully setting the dining table with precision. I laid out the plates, buffed the silverware until it gleamed under the chandelier's gentle light, and sparked a few candles to amplify the evening's coziness. Each thoughtful, small gesture carried a quiet wish that tonight could bridge the widening gap between us. I imagined a family brought together by a meal that honored not just the food but the ties that once held us close. In those fleeting moments, I held tight to the hope that love and unity could outshine the distractions that had slipped into our lives. But when I approached the front door, my stomach dropped. There, on the doorstep, sat a note, its words short but cutting: "We're dining at a fancy restaurant. Have your meal by yourself." In that moment, the vision I'd so painstakingly built crumbled into countless jagged pieces. A chilling surge of betrayal washed over me, as if the floor had vanished beneath my feet. I gaped at the note, my hands shaking, as the sting of its message slowly morphed into a heavy, gnawing grief. Before I could process it, I spotted hidden cameras, their small lenses recording every second. From the living room came a burst of laughter, cruel and unrelenting. I caught my mom's gleeful chuckle and Emily's piercing giggle, each sound sharpening the bite of my shame. Then, to make it worse, I glimpsed Emily's phone, streaming a live YouTube feed that exposed our personal world to thousands of strangers. In that agonizing second, I stood paralyzed, unable to believe what was happening. The meticulously planned dinner, the longing for a heartfelt family gathering, and the quiet times of reflection were all twisted into a vicious show. My thoughts spun with hurt and bewilderment as the weight of their deceit crashed over me. I felt naked and worthless, as if all my efforts to craft a perfect Thanksgiving were just a punchline for others' entertainment. The table I'd arranged with such care now stood as a symbol of my loneliness, every plate a painful reminder of the chasm that had grown between us. My heart shattered as I grasped the full impact, understanding that the love I'd yearned for was now poisoned by their chase for online approval. There, in the fading evening light, I could only let the shock sink in. The cold air mixed with the heat of my tears, and every noise, the far-off hum of cars, the soft rustle of the breeze, seemed to mirror the quiet of my broken dreams. In that aching stillness, I swore I'd never let anyone else decide my value or the worth of my heart. Though their betrayal seared deep inside, with every step from the door, I carried not just the pain of disgrace but a faint spark of resolve, a vow that, despite this cruel night, I'd find a way to take back my life and restore the love that once defined me. I walked away, casting one last, wistful look at the house that had once held promises of warmth, knowing nothing would ever feel the same. The truth hit me like a heavy weight, crushing every hopeful spark I'd nurtured since leaving work that bright, promising morning. I'd devoted endless hours to perfecting every part of our Thanksgiving meal, a feast meant to capture our family's love and togetherness. Yet, in a bitter turn of fate, I stood alone in a hushed, nearly empty dining room, the mocking laughter of those I trusted ringing in my ears. The table, prepared with such devotion, now taunted me with its still-warm turkey and neatly placed sides, each dish and utensil a testament to my effort, each untouched detail murmuring of hopes that had swiftly turned to shame. Emily's voice, sharp and jubilant, still echoed in my mind as she reveled in the drama playing out on her phone. My eyes burned as I thought of the note she'd left so carelessly, its words, "Have your meal by yourself," cutting through me like a blade. Even worse was the betrayal by my own mom, Barbara, whose once soothing presence had turned into that of a schemer. Together, they transformed what should have been a joyful family moment into a heartless act for an online crowd. The realization that they took pleasure in my pain was too much to endure, and in that moment, something inside me broke. My hands, which had just been gently arranging silverware, now gripped the note tightly, as if I could wring out its venom. The fragile paper ripped in my grasp, its torn pieces drifting to the floor like fragments of my broken faith. I saw Emily's eyes widen in shock as I let the note fall, and Barbara's laughter paused for a brief, stinging moment. Their cold, uncaring responses only fueled the growing fire of my anger. Every smirk, every motion, every thoughtless remark they made seemed crafted to highlight my insignificance and share my humiliation with the world. I felt like I was watching myself from afar, a helpless observer of a scene I couldn't control. My mind raced wildly, memories of joyful times collided painfully with the present, each one feeding my fury. I thought of the Thanksgiving dinners from my childhood, full of warmth, empathy, and true care, where every action was a quiet pledge of unwavering love. Now, those memories seemed like whispers from a far-off time, stained by the stark truth that the people I cherished had become strangers. That moment's harsh clarity made me face a truth I'd dodged for too long: I was no longer the heart of their world. I'd been reduced to a mere tool, a piece of content for their digital amusement. The idea was unbearable, yet it ignited a strength I didn't know I had. I refused to let myself be turned into a joke. The evening I'd so carefully planned, the love woven into every dish, and the hope for a family bound by gratitude were worth defending, even if it meant stepping into an uncertain, painful future. Right then, with my heart racing and tears on the verge of falling, I decided their cruelty wouldn't shape me. With one last, shaky push, I stepped back from the table and marched to the door, leaving the note scraps behind, much like the ruins of our fractured family ties. Their distant laughter still rang out, a harsh, grating echo of the betrayal that had unfolded. I walked into the night, the cool air enveloping me like a shield as I left behind a home that had become a platform for ridicule. Each step away was heavy with both sorrow and a strange sense of freedom as I tried to make sense of the person I'd been and the painful reality now before me. The jeers and laughter faded into a faint buzz, while my mind churned with rage, grief, and a fierce need to rediscover myself. I roamed the silent streets, each corner stirring memories of happier days when family meant comfort and strength. Now, every familiar spot reminded me of the closeness we'd lost, destroyed by selfish desires and the pull of online praise. Above me, the sky stretched out in deep blues, dotted with uncaring stars, oblivious to my inner chaos. I thought of my dad's quiet wisdom, how he'd told me that real strength came from truth and persistence. That night, his words echoed with every breath I took. My soul longed for the simple pleasure of sharing a meal, chuckling over old stories, and creating new ones. But the betrayal I'd faced forced me to see a bitter reality. The life I thought I knew had been warped by a thirst for attention and the empty applause of social media. Every step I took felt like a rebellion against the world I'd known. With each one, I questioned the sacrifices I'd made, the endless work hours, the late nights planning a Thanksgiving I thought would mend our family. I'd dreamed of an evening filled with warm talks and real smiles, not a public stunt that turned my pain into strangers' entertainment. The painful truth hit me hard: those I trusted most had traded my happiness for the fleeting thrill of social media fame, igniting a fierce determination deep within me. I knew I needed to break free from the dark cloud of their disloyalty, to carve out a new path where I could redefine myself, untouched by their heartless choices. As I roamed the city, its soft, steady pulse offered a faint comfort. Neon lights blinked on and off, each flash a quiet nudge that life marched on, no matter how much my heart ached. I thought back to days when simple things, like whipping up a meal for those I cared about, sparked pure happiness. Though laced with longing, that memory stoked my resolve to chase a future rooted in realness, not empty displays. I shot a quick text to a buddy whose invite I'd passed on before, pausing just a second before agreeing to join him somewhere fresh, a place that held the promise of true connection. That choice felt like a tiny act of defiance against the past that had let me down, a first step toward reclaiming my self-respect. With every passing moment, the night shifted from a backdrop of my sorrow to a fresh canvas, ready for a new story to begin. I wandered aimlessly, letting my mind drift through a maze of memories and glimmers of hope. The pain still stung, sharp and fresh, but beneath it, a quiet strength was brewing, urging me to reshape what family and belonging meant to me. I decided I was done playing a supporting role in someone else's cruel script. From now on, I'd write my own story, one where respect, love, and real bonds were earned, not assumed. On that lonely walk beneath a vast, uncaring sky, I realized the toughest steps are often the ones that pull us away from what we used to hold dear. Each stride I took was a bold statement that I wouldn't let their malice define my value. As I pressed forward, the faint glow of a future where I could piece together my fractured self began to shine, like the soft light of morning breaking through. I had left behind the past that had wounded me, ready to step into a new phase where my worth came not from others' fleeting praise but from the resilience I discovered within. I reached Ethan's house, my heart still heavy with the sour sting of that disastrous Thanksgiving back home. Before I could even knock, the door swung open, and I was met with warm grins and heartfelt hugs. The place glowed with gentle light, filled with the comforting scent of home-cooked food and the soothing hum of friendly conversation. Here, I felt the first flickers of optimism after what had been a long, isolating road. I stepped inside slowly, each step a small triumph over the dark thoughts that had haunted me since I fled the cold, judgmental walls of my old life. Sarah, Ethan's warm and generous wife, greeted me with a steaming plate of food and a kind embrace that made me feel truly noticed and valued. "You made it just in time," she said with a gentle smile, guiding me to a long, welcoming dining table. It was the kind of reception I'd been craving, a real gathering of friends who valued authentic bonds over the shallow chase for online likes. As I settled at the table, I saw a room full of people whose eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity about one another's lives. Their laughter wasn't staged or forced, it was honest, the kind that bubbles up from the soul. I tuned in as lifelong friends rekindled old ties and new friendships bloomed over shared stories and aspirations. The warmth of that space stood in sharp contrast to the icy betrayal I just faced. Every dish on the table told a tale of its own, herb-crusted roast chicken that carried the comfort of home, fluffy mashed potatoes whipped to perfection, and a colorful salad bursting with the promise of a fresh start. Each bite reminded me that food could soothe wounds and unite people in ways no screen ever could. As the night went on, I found myself pulled into discussions that sparked both laughter and reflection. I met Lucas, a lively chef whose face lit up when he spoke about cooking. His relaxed vibe and real passion for food stirred something in me, a nudge of the joy I used to find in creating dishes that made people smile. "You've got a real gift," he said, his tone kind and uplifting. His words hit home, pulling up memories of easier days when cooking wasn't just a task but a craft, a way to express myself. I hung on to his every word as he explained how each ingredient held the potential to make something extraordinary, and his enthusiasm gently showed me that I might just rediscover that spark. The longer I stayed, the more I felt the heavy chains of my past start to loosen. This was a place free of shame or scorn, a haven where every grin and shared tale was a gesture of true kindness. As the evening deepened, I jumped into the spirited conversations, sharing my own thoughts and slowly opening up about the pain that had pushed me away from my old life. The room listened with compassion, and I felt a surprising lightness as a burden lifted from my chest. Just being heard reminded me that real warmth isn't counted in likes or followers but in the empathy of a heartfelt connection. By the night's end, I realized I'd stumbled upon something I thought was gone for good, a sense of belonging and acceptance that nourished me more than any meal I'd ever made alone. The talks, the chuckles, and even the quiet moments of mutual understanding began to patch up the cracks in my heart. I saw now that true warmth came from turning away from a world obsessed with showy displays and embracing the generosity of those who shared their lives without ulterior motives. As I said my goodbyes, Ethan gave me a hearty pat on the back, assuring me I'd always have a place here, a space to rebuild and thrive. Stepping back into the chilly night, I carried a fresh sense of purpose. The memory of that house, brimming with sincere care and honest warmth, would light my way toward a future where I could reclaim the dignity and love that were always mine. When I got home that night, the heavy silence of loss and regret filled every corner. The cold, empty house felt more like a gallery of faded memories than a sanctuary. The echoes of earlier laughter and harsh taunts lingered, haunting me like specters of what used to be. I stood in the living room, shadows flickering on the walls as if mocking my existence. The table I'd set with such care now sat under a thin veil of dust, a sharp reminder that the warmth I'd hoped for had vanished in a heartbeat. I moved slowly through the house, each step weighed down by the burden of betrayal and grief. I couldn't stop replaying the events in my head, the note on the doorstep, the hidden cameras, the roaring laughter that turned my carefully planned Thanksgiving into a cruel joke. My heart raced, a storm of anger and despair swirling inside me. I felt utterly exposed, like I'd been stripped bare for a world that only cared about quick digital cheers. I slumped into the worn armchair in the living room's corner, desperately trying to gather the fragments of my pride. Memories of happier days crashed against the harsh reality I now faced. I thought of past Thanksgivings, filled with smiles when love and care were the only things on the menu. Now, the empty chairs and stark silence were a bitter proof of a family that had drifted far off course. The sting of every cruel comment, every mocking emoji flashing across screens online, felt almost physical. The pain was raw, unfiltered, and I fought to steady my breath as tears pooled in my eyes. My mind buzzed with questions. How had it come to this? When did our family ties twist into something I couldn't recognize? I thought of the hopeful plans I'd crafted, the dreams of unity that felt so right and natural. Instead, I was left with the sour taste of deceit and self-doubt. As the minutes dragged into hours, I started to see that this wasn't just about a ruined meal, it was about the crumbling of trust, the collapse of a world I knew into a void of shallow validation. In that gut-wrenching moment, I stood paralyzed, unable to process the scene. The meal I'd lovingly prepared, the dream of a heartfelt family gathering, and the quiet times of introspection had all been twisted into a vicious public stunt. My thoughts swirled with pain and disbelief as the sting of their deceit crashed over me like a wave. I felt utterly vulnerable and small, as if all my hard work to craft a flawless Thanksgiving was just a punchline for strangers' entertainment. The table, arranged with such devotion, now stood as a painful emblem of my loneliness, each dish a stark reminder of the growing chasm between us. My heart shattered as I grappled with the weight of it all, seeing that the love I'd craved was now poisoned by their obsession with social media fame. There in the fading evening glow, I could only let the shock take hold. The chilly air blended with the warmth of my tears, and every noise, the far-off drone of cars, the soft sigh of the breeze, seemed to mirror the quiet of my crushed dreams. In that aching stillness, I made a solemn promise to myself: no one else would ever define my value or the worth of my spirit. Though their betrayal seared deep inside, with every step away from the door, I carried not just the pain of disgrace but a faint spark of resolve, a commitment that, despite this cruel night, I'd find a way to rebuild my life and rediscover the love that once made me whole. I turned away, stealing one last, wistful glance at the house that had once held such promise of comfort, knowing everything had changed forever. The truth hit me like a heavy weight, smashing every hopeful thought I'd held since leaving work that bright, optimistic morning. I'd poured countless hours into perfecting every detail of our Thanksgiving feast, a meal meant to embody our family's unity and affection. Yet, in a bitter twist of fate, I now stood alone in a hushed, nearly empty dining room, the mocking laughter of those I trusted ringing painfully in my ears. The table before me, set with such care, now taunted me with its still-warm turkey and neatly placed sides, each plate and utensil a testament to my effort, each untouched garnish whispering of hopes that had crumbled into shame. Emily's voice, sharp and jubilant, still echoed in my mind as she reveled in the drama unfolding on her phone. My eyes burned as I recalled the note she'd left so carelessly, its words, "Have your meal by yourself," cutting through me like a blade. Even worse was the betrayal by my own mom, Barbara, whose once soothing presence had turned into that of a schemer. Together, they transformed what should have been a joyful family moment into a heartless act for an online crowd. The realization that they took pleasure in my pain was too much to endure, and in that moment, something inside me broke. My hands, which had just been gently arranging silverware, now gripped the note tightly, as if I could wring out its venom. The fragile paper ripped in my grasp, its torn pieces drifting to the floor like fragments of my broken faith. I saw Emily's eyes widen in shock as I let the note fall, and Barbara's laughter paused for a brief, stinging moment. Their cold, uncaring responses only fueled the growing fire of my anger. Every smirk, every motion, every thoughtless remark they made seemed crafted to highlight my insignificance and share my humiliation with the world. I felt like I was watching myself from afar, a helpless observer of a scene I couldn't control. My mind raced wildly, memories of joyful times collided painfully with the present, each one feeding my fury. I thought of the Thanksgiving dinners from my childhood, full of warmth, empathy, and true care, where every action was a quiet pledge of unwavering love. Now, those memories seemed like whispers from a far-off time, stained by the stark truth that the people I cherished had become strangers. That moment's harsh clarity forced me to face a truth I'd dodged for too long: I was no longer the heart of their world. I'd been reduced to a mere tool, a piece of content for their digital amusement. The idea was unbearable, yet it ignited a strength I didn't know I had. I refused to let myself be turned into a joke. The evening I'd so carefully planned, the love woven into every dish, and the hope for a family bound by gratitude were worth defending, even if it meant stepping into an uncertain, painful future. Right then, with my heart racing and tears on the verge of falling, I decided their cruelty wouldn't shape me. With one last, shaky push, I stepped back from the table and marched to the door, leaving the note scraps behind, much like the ruins of our fractured family ties. Their distant laughter still rang out, a harsh, grating echo of the betrayal that had unfolded. I walked into the night, the cool air enveloping me like a shield as I left behind a home that had become a platform for ridicule. Each step away was heavy with both sorrow and a strange sense of freedom as I tried to make sense of the person I'd been and the painful reality now before me. The jeers and laughter faded into a faint buzz, while my mind churned with rage, grief, and a fierce need to rediscover myself. I roamed the silent streets, each corner stirring memories of happier days when family meant comfort and strength. Now, every familiar spot reminded me of the closeness we'd lost, destroyed by selfish desires and the pull of online praise. Above me, the sky stretched out in deep blues, dotted with uncaring stars, oblivious to my inner chaos. I thought of my dad's quiet wisdom, how he'd told me that real strength came from truth and persistence. That night, his words echoed with every breath I took. My soul longed for the simple pleasure of sharing a meal, chuckling over old stories, and creating new ones. But the betrayal I'd faced forced me to see a bitter reality. The life I thought I knew had been warped by a thirst for attention and the empty applause of social media. Every step I took felt like a rebellion against the world I'd known. With each one, I questioned the sacrifices I'd made, the endless work hours, the late nights planning a Thanksgiving I thought would mend our family. I'd dreamed of an evening filled with warm talks and real smiles, not a public stunt that turned my pain into strangers' entertainment. The painful truth that those who should have cared chose the lure of online praise over my well-being lit a fierce determination in me. I knew I had to break free from the shadow of their disloyalty, to find a way to rebuild who I was without being shaped by their cold actions. As I drifted through the city, its gentle rhythms gave me a sliver of peace. Neon signs blinked on and off, each flicker a quiet reminder that life kept moving, no matter my personal pain. I remembered when small gestures, like cooking for those I loved, brought pure joy. That memory, though bittersweet, fueled my drive to chase a future grounded in truth, not empty displays. I sent a quick message to a friend whose invite I'd turned down before, pausing briefly before agreeing to join him somewhere new, a place that offered the hope of real connection. That choice felt like a small act of defiance against a past that had failed me, a first move toward restoring my pride. With every minute, the night transformed from a scene of my sorrow into a fresh page, ready for a new chapter. I wandered without a goal, letting my thoughts weave through memories and glimmers of hope. The pain was still sharp, but beneath it, a quiet resolve was growing, pushing me to rethink what family and belonging really meant. I decided I was done being a side character in someone else's cruel play. I'd write my own story now, one where love, respect, and true bonds were earned, not assumed. On that lonely trek under a vast, uncaring sky, I saw that the hardest steps often lead us away from what we once treasured. Each stride was a bold claim that I wouldn't let their malice define my value. As I moved forward, the faint promise of a future where I could heal my broken pieces began to glow, like the first rays of dawn. I'd left behind the past that wounded me, ready to embrace a new phase where my worth came not from others' fleeting praise but from the strength I found inside. I reached Ethan's house, my heart still heavy with the bitter echoes of that awful Thanksgiving back home. The door opened before I could knock, and I was met with warm smiles and heartfelt hugs. The house glowed with soft light, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh cooked meals and the soothing buzz of friendly talk. Here, I felt the first sparks of hope after a long, lonely road. I stepped inside slowly, each step a small victory over the dark thoughts that had haunted me since leaving the cold, judgmental walls of my old life. Sarah, Ethan's warm-hearted wife, greeted me with a steaming plate of food and a kind embrace that made me feel truly seen and valued. "You're right on time," she said with a gentle grin, leading me to a long, welcoming dining table. It was the kind of greeting I'd been yearning for, a true gathering of friends who cared more about real bonds than chasing online approval. As I sat at the table, I noticed the room was alive with people whose eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity about each other's lives. Their laughter wasn't staged or forced, it was honest, the kind that comes straight from the heart. I listened as old friends rekindled ties and new connections formed over shared stories and dreams. The warmth of that space stood in sharp contrast to the icy betrayal I'd just endured. Each dish on the table told its own story: herb-roasted chicken that smelled like home, creamy mashed potatoes whipped to perfection, and a vibrant salad bursting with the promise of a fresh start. Every bite reminded me that food could mend wounds and bring people together in ways no screen ever could. As the night unfolded, I was pulled into conversations that sparked laughter and reflection. I met Lucas, a vibrant chef whose face glowed when he talked about cooking. His easygoing nature and true passion for food rekindled something in me, a reminder of the joy I once found in making meals that brought smiles. "You've got real skill," he said, his voice warm and encouraging. His words hit deep, stirring memories of simpler times when cooking was more than a chore, it was an art, a way to express myself. I soaked up his words as he explained how every ingredient held the potential to create something extraordinary, and his enthusiasm slowly showed me I might rediscover that joy. The longer I stayed, the more I felt the heavy grip of my past start to slip. This was a place free of shame or mockery, a haven where every smile and shared tale was a gesture of true kindness. As the evening grew late, I joined the lively discussions, sharing my thoughts and slowly opening up about the pain that had driven me from my old life. The room listened with empathy, and I felt a surprising lightness as a weight lifted from my shoulders. Just being heard reminded me that real warmth isn't measured in likes or followers but in the compassion of a heartfelt connection. By the end of the night, I realized I'd found something I thought I'd lost forever, a sense of belonging and acceptance that nourished me more than any meal I'd made alone. The talks, the laughter, and even the quiet moments of understanding began to patch up the cracks in my heart. I saw now that true warmth meant turning away from a world obsessed with spectacle and embracing the generosity of those who shared their lives without hidden agendas. As I said goodbye, Ethan gave me a hearty pat on the back, assuring me I'd always have a place here, a space to rebuild and grow. Stepping back into the cold night, I carried a fresh sense of purpose. The memory of that house, brimming with sincere care and honest warmth, would guide me toward a future where I could reclaim the dignity and love that were always mine. When I got home that night, the heavy silence of loss and regret filled every room. The cold, empty house felt more like a gallery of faded memories than a sanctuary. The echoes of earlier laughter and cruel taunts lingered, haunting me like ghosts of what used to be. I stood in the living room, shadows flickering on the walls as if mocking my existence. The table I'd set with such care now sat under a thin veil of dust, a sharp reminder that the warmth I'd hoped for had vanished in a heartbeat. I wandered slowly through the house, each step weighed down by the crushing pain of betrayal and grief. My mind kept looping back to the events, replaying them endlessly, the note left on the doorstep, the hidden cameras, the mocking laughter that twisted my carefully planned Thanksgiving into a heartless public show. My heart raced, a storm of rage and sorrow churning inside me. I felt utterly exposed, as if I'd been stripped bare for a world that only cared about quick online cheers. Collapsing into the old armchair in the living room's corner, I fought desperately to gather the fragments of my shattered pride. Memories of joyful times clashed painfully with the harsh reality I now faced. I thought of past Thanksgivings, filled with warm smiles when love and care were the only things we served. Now, the empty chairs and chilling silence stood as a bitter proof of a family that had drifted far from its roots. The sting of every cruel comment, every mocking emoji flashing across screens online, felt almost tangible. The pain was sharp and unfiltered, and I struggled to catch my breath as tears pooled in my eyes. Questions swirled in my head: how had things spiraled to this point? When did our family ties warp into something I couldn't recognize? I recalled the optimistic plans I'd crafted, the visions of unity that felt so natural and true. Instead, I was left with the sour taste of deceit and self-doubt. As the minutes dragged into hours, I began to see that this wasn't just about a ruined meal, it was about the crumbling of trust, the collapse of a world I knew into a hollow chase for shallow praise. The hurt wasn't confined to that one night anymore, it had crept into every part of my life, tainting cherished memories and dimming my hopes for the future. I could still picture Emily's face, glowing in the light of her phone as she basked in the moment, and Barbara's eyes, sparkling with amusement. Their betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. I realized the digital world they'd so eagerly embraced had stolen the authentic connection I longed for. Yet, in the depths of my despair, a flicker of determination began to glow. I saw that the fallout from that night wasn't the end of my journey but a pivotal moment, a tough lesson in recognizing my own value. Slowly, I stood from the chair, my body stiff but my heart pulsing with a growing resolve. I knew I couldn't let others' cruelty shape my path forward. Every broken shard of trust, every aching memory, would fuel my drive to build a new road, one rooted in honesty, self-worth, and the quiet strength of living true. I spent the rest of the night lost in thought. The house's silence, broken only by my steadfast reflections, became a canvas for my newfound purpose. I made a quiet vow to myself: never again would I let my spirit be crushed for a cheap laugh or a fleeting viral hit. The fallout was brutal, but it was also a wake-up call to rebuild, a life free from the poison of empty validation. As I flicked off the lights and stepped into the cool night, I carried a renewed sense of direction. In that lonely, desolate moment, I realized that sometimes the deepest betrayals spark the most powerful renewals, and the only way to heal was to move forward, one determined step at a time. I hadn't seen such a sharp turn in my life coming, but amid the heartbreak, a spark of hope emerged. In the days following that agonizing Thanksgiving, I spent long hours alone in my apartment, grappling with the aftermath of betrayal. One quiet, solitary evening, my phone lit up with a message from Lucas. We'd crossed paths briefly at Ethan's gathering, and our chat about food had stuck with me. His simple question, "Ever thought about making cooking more than a hobby?" felt like a dare, a nudge to reconnect with a passion I'd buried under the weight of my financial analyst job. At first, I shrugged it off. Cooking was always my escape, a way to find comfort, not something I saw as a career. But as the days went by and I mulled over the past week's events, Lucas's words started to sink in, planting a small seed of possibility. I thought back to the hours I'd spent in the kitchen, carefully crafting dishes filled with love and intention. Cooking had always brought me a sense of peace, a brief respite from life's stresses. I began to wonder if there was more to it than just putting food on the table. Maybe my love for cooking could lead me somewhere new, a way to rebuild my confidence and create something truly my own. With cautious excitement, I reached out to Lucas. His response was quick and uplifting. "Why don't you swing by the restaurant this weekend? Get a feel for the kitchen's vibe." That simple, heartfelt invitation felt like a lifeline. I said yes, unsure of what lay ahead but ready to take the leap. When Saturday came, I stood outside the humble yet lively restaurant where Lucas worked. The air was thick with the scent of fresh herbs, simmering sauces, and warm bread, pulling me back to a simpler time when the kitchen was my haven. Lucas welcomed me with a broad grin and guided me through the bustling space, sharing the kitchen's rhythm and the care poured into every plate. I watched him move smoothly between stations, earning respect not through control but through his genuine passion for food. As he introduced me to the other chefs and staff, I felt a strange sense of belonging. Here, I wasn't judged for past mistakes or family betrayals, I was just another person who loved to cook. That long day in the restaurant was a whirlwind. Lucas showed me little tricks and shared wisdom about flavor, texture, and plating. I learned how each ingredient carried its own tale, and how blending them just right could create a dish greater than its parts. The work was tough, the hours dragged on, and the pace was relentless, but I felt truly alive for the first time in months. A surge of energy and optimism washed over me, something I hadn't felt in ages. As I diced vegetables and stirred sauces, I glimpsed the promise of a fresh start. Every chop, every taste, every shared chuckle in that kitchen began to heal the parts of me broken by the cruelty of my past. By the day's end, as I wiped sweat from my forehead and surveyed the vibrant, busy kitchen, I knew this wasn't just a brief escape, it was a chance to redefine my future. Choosing to dive into the culinary world wasn't a snap decision, it stemmed from a deep desire to reclaim who I was and find joy in something real and meaningful. I left the restaurant that night exhausted but exhilarated, feeling like I'd taken the first real step toward rebuilding my life. Lucas's encouraging words rang in my ears, "You've got serious talent. Let it shine." Now, standing at the edge of this new adventure, I'm both nervous and thrilled. Every moment in the kitchen reminds me that life can shift when you chase what sets your soul on fire. The road ahead might be full of hurdles, but with every dish I craft, I'm learning to trust my skills and embrace a future that's all mine. The pain of the past hasn't disappeared, but it's morphed into a quiet strength that drives me forward. In that lively restaurant, amid the clanging pans and sizzling ingredients, I learned that sometimes the most unexpected chances lead to the deepest transformations. Today, I believe my love for cooking can pave the way to a brighter future, one plate at a time. I'd reached a place where the sting of old memories was slowly fading, replaced by a tentative hope for a future I could shape on my terms. In the months after that disastrous Thanksgiving and its fallout, my life took surprising turns. The gradual shift in my days was both a healing journey and a bold step into the unknown. My weekend with Lucas at the restaurant had grown into a rich, creative partnership. What began as a refuge from betrayal had blossomed into a passionate pursuit that filled my life with meaning and warmth. I started playing with recipes, mixing flavors, and reimagining classic dishes with a newfound sense of freedom. Each new dish wasn't just food, it was a bold statement of my rebirth, a sign that I was taking back my identity one step at a time. The restaurant became my safe haven, where every sizzling skillet and fragrant herb told a tale of perseverance. I began to see the artistry in the simplest ingredients and the magic in the daily act of cooking. Every dish I made felt like a quiet rebellion against the pain of the past, a way to rewrite my life story. I shared my creations not through the cold filter of social media for likes, but through real conversations about the joy of food and the healing power of passion. My co-workers and patrons noticed a change, a quiet confidence that shone from me like the glow of a steady flame. They said my dishes told a story, one that connected with anyone who'd ever felt lost or betrayed, and that bond made every challenge worth it. At home, the empty spaces once heavy with the bitterness of broken promises were slowly giving way to a peaceful calm. I'd learned to let go of needing approval from those who'd hurt me. The nights felt less lonely as I embraced the value of solitude, using those quiet hours to reflect and create. I spent long evenings writing in my journal, pouring every thought and feeling onto the page. This introspection helped me spot patterns in my past and realize that every misstep and moment of pain was a stepping stone to a brighter future. I started to value the lessons I'd learned, seeing that even in betrayal, there was a chance to grow and redefine what really mattered. As weeks turned into months, the scars of the past became faint echoes rather than raw wounds. I found comfort in the laughter of new friends and the warm smiles of customers who kept coming back. The restaurant, once just a job, turned into a community hub, a place where strangers became friends over shared meals and heartfelt talks. I felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing my journey from despair to creativity was not only healing me but also touching others' lives. With every new dish, I celebrated my freedom and my knack for finding beauty in unexpected places. I realized life after the past wasn't about wiping out memories but using them as fuel to build something richer. My time in the kitchen was a daily reminder that every ending could spark a new beginning, and every heartbreak could grow into strength. In the gentle glow of dusk, as I locked up the restaurant for the night, I took a moment to think about how far I'd come. The journey was far from done, but each step forward proved my resilience. I no longer lingered in the shadow of old betrayals. Instead, I welcomed the future with open arms, certain that my newfound purpose would keep guiding me. Life had shown me that true healing comes from within, and the toughest chapters often lead to the brightest new starts. I walked into the night with a calm assurance, knowing the path ahead, though uncertain, was mine to forge, untouched by the echoes of a past that no longer held me. Every breath I took was a reminder that I'd reclaimed not just my talent but my spirit. In that serene moment, beneath a starry sky stretching endlessly above, I saw that the life I was building was a tapestry of all my experiences, each broken piece adding to a picture of hope, perseverance, and unyielding strength. I still recall the day I agreed to meet Emily at a neutral cafe, a choice that sat heavy on my heart. When I arrived, the familiar warmth of our home was gone, replaced by a cold unease that lingered in every second. I spotted her from a distance, sitting alone with a coffee steaming faintly in the soft early afternoon light. Her eyes, once bold with confidence, now flickered with uncertainty around the room, and I knew something had shifted. I approached her table slowly, my footsteps echoing in the quiet as I sat across from her. There was no small talk, just the weight of unspoken words piled up between us. "I've lost it all," she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the hum of distant chatter. Her confession hung there, fragile and raw, and I could tell she was trying to piece together her own broken pride. I listened closely, a mix of sadness and a sharp sense of irony hitting me as our roles had flipped. I'd once been the one left hurt and abandoned, and now she seemed the one lost in regret. I took a slow, steady breath and met her eyes. "Fix what, exactly?" I asked softly, my words both a challenge and a quiet plea for clarity. For the first time, her gaze met mine with raw vulnerability, as if she understood our lives had been changed by more than just one night. I thought back to every moment of shame and betrayal from that awful Thanksgiving, each memory a piercing reminder of the night my trust was shattered and my heart made to feel small. In that moment, I saw not just the woman who'd been my partner but someone who'd chosen a path of cruelty and hollow validation. "I know I caused you pain," she said quietly, "and I'm trying to make things right." Her soft words stirred a whirlwind of feelings inside me, anger, grief, and a faint yearning for what we once had. I could almost hear the echoes of our happier days, the laughter over simple dinners, the promises made in the stillness of the night. But I also felt the crushing pain of being discarded for a fleeting moment of online fame, the betrayal that left me questioning if I'd ever mattered. I paused, the weight of my silence reflecting the countless hours I'd spent wrestling with whether forgiveness could ever heal such public wounds. The cafe around us faded away as we sat, caught in a silent clash of regrets and unanswered questions. "If you want to see me again, book a table," I said with a faint smile that didn't reach my eyes, a final, ironic jab that echoed the pain I'd endured. My simple words carried both a promise and a warning. I wasn't the man who'd linger in the shadow of someone else's mistakes. In that tense moment, the cafe turned into a stage for something far bigger than just airing out old hurts. It was a moment of facing who I'd become after trust was broken, a man who'd learned that real value isn't tied to the quick buzz of social media praise but to the steady strength of self-respect and courage earned through struggle. As Emily sat there, her eyes shimmering with tears, I saw that our roads had split long ago, every step a choice to either hold tight to or let go of the lessons from our shared history. My heart, still sore from past scars, quietly insisted that healing required raw truth, a painful acknowledgement of what we'd lost and what could never be pieced back together. With that, I stood up, leaving the table and the fragments of our former life behind, walking out into the crisp daylight that held the promise of fresh starts, even as it grieved the close of a chapter. A full year had gone by since that devastating Thanksgiving when my world fell apart, and now my life was a far cry from the pain of those days. My restaurant, once just a distant dream, had blossomed into a lively hub of creativity and optimism. Lucas and I had poured our hearts and hands into building it from scratch, and the success we found was more rewarding than I could have ever hoped. Our story had been highlighted in food magazines, shared with countless readers, and we'd even launched a second spot that thrummed with vitality and potential. Each day in the kitchen was a reminder that the bitterness of the past had given way to a future brimming with warmth, respect, and a love for cooking that soothed old wounds. Thanksgiving Eve brought a sense of peace and renewal. The restaurant hummed with understated excitement as familiar faces and new friends gathered for the private event I was hosting, a celebration not of what I'd lost but of the new life I'd built. The sense of slow-cooked meats, bubbling sauces, and fresh herbs filled the air, enveloping the space in a comforting hug. I moved among the bustling staff and eager guests with an assurance carved from long hours and hard-won lessons. Every dish I crafted told a tale of persistence, each plate a quiet triumph over the isolation and betrayal that once shaped my world. As I put the finishing touches on the evening's signature dish with care, I felt someone nearby in the otherwise lively kitchen. Lucas, his eyes sparkling with excitement and a hint of playful mischief, stepped up, holding a small velvet box. His warm, genuine grin quickened my pulse as he said, "Man, I think you're ready for the next big step." With shaky hands and a rush of feelings, I opened the box to find a custom gold chef's pin, carefully etched with my name. In that single, gleaming token, I saw every late night, every tear, and every doubt transformed into a badge of accomplishment. I clutched the pin tightly, overwhelmed by a wave of gratitude, pride, and relief. It was proof that my struggles hadn't been for nothing. I'd pushed through the darkness and stepped into a light that now radiated from within. That kitchen moment was more than just a kind gesture, it marked a turning point in my life. As I pinned it to my apron, I thought back to the cruelty of that past Thanksgiving, the humiliation that left me feeling discarded and broken. I recalled how my own family had mocked my efforts, leaving me to walk away with a heart in pieces. But tonight, the pain of that memory was overshadowed by the vibrant energy of a fresh start. The restaurant, alive with laughter, sincere praise, and heartfelt thanks, stood as a testament to the future I'd chosen, one defined by my own sense of worth. I moved through the night with a renewed sense of purpose, connecting with guests eager to hear the story behind each dish. Cooking was no longer just a way to get by, it was my craft, my voice, and my bold claim that I had a place in this world. As the night grew late and the final guest left, I stood alone in the quiet kitchen, the soft glow of the pin mirroring my transformed identity. A deep gratitude washed over me for every challenge that had brought me here. Each scar was a marker of how far I'd traveled, each tear, a step toward the man I'd become. That Thanksgiving was no longer a day of loneliness and betrayal but a celebration of my strength to rise above and build a life rich with real connections and true passion. In that moment, with the gentle hum of the night outside and the lingering warmth of the evening within, I knew I'd found my own Thanksgiving, a tribute to resilience, hope, and the unshakable truth that I was enough. Thanksgiving night at my restaurant was unlike anything I'd ever known. The soft clink of silverware and the hum of contented voices filled the air as I wandered slowly among the tables, a calm settling deep within me. I'd built this place with my own hands, and every detail, every plate, every thoughtfully placed flower, every warm smile, spoke of a new life rising from the ruins of past pain. I thought back to the cold isolation of earlier Thanksgivings, the sharp sting of betrayal that once made me feel worthless. Now, here I was, wrapped in genuine appreciation and heartfelt gratitude. I'd learned to embrace life on my own terms, and tonight was proof of the power that comes from choosing yourself above all. Guests murmured praise about the flavors and the heartfelt stories woven into each dish. I listened quietly as one diner shared how the food brought back memories of home and comfort, and I felt a warmth no social media like could ever match. In that instant, I realized true gratitude wasn't about chasing digital approval but about being valued through the honesty of face-to-face bonds and shared moments. Standing in the heart of the dining room, I paused to take in the scene. There was a quiet sense of celebration, a shared understanding that everyone here was part of something bigger, a community tied not by appearances or passing fads but by a love for authentic, meaningful connection. I thought of the long nights spent chopping vegetables and stirring sauces, the moments of doubt when I wondered if my passion could ever sustain me. But here, every struggle had become a stepping stone to a future where I wasn't defined by others' cruelty but by the love I poured into every dish. I remembered Lucas's voice, urging me to follow my heart in the kitchen, and the journey from a life scarred by public shame to one of quiet pride. It hadn't been an easy road, and I'd paid a steep price for my mistakes and for trusting those who chose fleeting fame over family. Yet, tonight, as I looked at the faces of people who believed in the heart of my craft, I felt a profound, lasting gratitude. I silently thanked each person for giving me the strength to rebuild, for showing me that life could be rich when nurtured with care, determination, and a willingness to release old wounds. Every dish served that night carried a piece of my journey, the pain, the healing, the rebirth. Each smile I saw was a reminder that I hadn't just survived my past but had grown beyond it. The memory of that awful Thanksgiving had faded into a lesson, a reminder that a man's worth isn't found in fleeting moments of shame but in the steady pursuit of a life built on passion, kindness, and resilience. I moved among the guests, exchanging brief words of thanks and soft laughter, my heart swelling with a true sense of belonging. As the evening wound down, I stepped outside into the cool air for a moment of solitude beneath the starry sky. I let myself fully feel the gratitude of the night, a gratitude that stretched beyond the restaurant's success and into the core of who I'd become. I knew I'd chosen a different path, one where my worth wasn't measured by others' approval but by the honest connections and loving support now surrounding me. In that quiet moment, I vowed to hold fast to this truth: real gratitude lies in the warmth of human connection, in the courage to embrace your own journey, and in the quiet confidence of knowing you are enough. And so, as I turned back toward the softly glowing restaurant, I carried the hope that every future Thanksgiving would be a celebration of a life lived true, a powerful tribute to the strength found in choosing gratitude over bitterness, love over regret, and self-worth over the hollow noise of the past. That's all for today's tale on Top Stories Hub. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you'd like to see next.